Hi everyone, this is another game from round one of the Isle of Man chess tournament. With the white pieces, the GM named Aravind, I think Indian Grandmaster, and with the black pieces is Spanish Grandmaster Francisco Vallejo Ponce. This is an interesting game. King's Indian Attack is an interesting opening, and it's not even, I don't even consider it an opening. I think a lot of masters agree with me. Um, it's more of a system, just like we speak of the Kala system, or you know, um, it's more. And the reason why I call it a system is because you can pretty much play it against anything. These moves are pretty much universal and are significant, signifying systems. For instance, when I talk about King's Indian Attack, for example, you can play these moves, say starting from e4, say French. I don't know, bishop e7, castles. Let's throw that in, and you get this. This kind of setup right here. Yeah, and with the idea of attacking on the king side, and you see this from different setups. So you basically have this piece arrangement no matter what black does, and that's why I tend to call it a system rather than uh, an opening. And the collar system is the same way, where you get these type of you know either that or just this, and you get the same setup no matter what black does. Same with the London system. Okay, so this game again, GM Aravinda versus Vallejo Ponce. So knight f3, e6, very flexible opening. d3, and you could go into anything from here. I mean, f5, you could play the Dutch if you want, or d5 or c5. Very flexible. So we see b5, one of the and this is known as the Polish opening in some circles, a Polish defense rather. The Polish opening would be to start out with 1b4 and uh, this move 2b5, Polish defense. And the idea, of course, rapid development, bringing the bishop immediately to this diagonal, but more importantly is to prohibit white from playing in the queen's gambit fashion with c4, as black would readily exchange this pawn. And this was actually played by Boris Spassky in the World Championship match against Tigran Petrosian. But again, it's as you can see, there are some weaknesses left behind that black must be careful to keep an eye on. Bishop g2, bishop b7, d3, and we see white going into this King's Indian Attack formation. Again, you could play this against any black setup. Castles. There is e4, and one of the main ideas that that white likes to do is create a wedge here. If you've seen some of my other videos, Aaron Nimzovich many years ago in the book Blockade gave three main reasons for central pawn advance. There are three main reasons. I'm not going to get into it in this video. You can check some of my older videos out to get into that, but one of the reasons is to create a wedge in the position. Wedge being in this case would be e5, which cuts off communication between um, the A, B, C, D files. It creates a wedge between those files and the queen side files and the king side files, right? And this makes it more difficult for black to organize his defense on the king side. Since there's a wedge in the position, it's harder for him to get his pieces over to assist the king, and therefore this facilitates the white attack on the king side. d6. This does two things. It keeps e5 from happening right away, and it also protects the c5 square. It's very flexible. Notice how he doesn't play d5 here. Keeps the bishop's diagonal open, and also c5 can be played by black, gaining space. So just from the opening, we can see that black is signified. I didn't bring this up, but I should have. Black is signified also by playing the move b5, is that he, is going to play on the queen side. That's going to be his strategy for the whole game, is to, play these kind of moves, c5, b5, depending on the situation, advancing on the queen side and opening up and seeking his play over there. There's c5, knight f1. So we see again GM Arvindh playing this King's Indian attack. These moves are just basically like just standard moves. Knight f1, the pawn goes to h4. This knight goes to h2. Pawn advances to h5. Knight goes to g4. Sometimes you see a bishop on f4. Sometimes this pawn will go on h6, which can be dangerous because sacrifices happen. The only thing that's really different here is that black is guarding this e5 square, preventing this pawn from creating this wedge here and driving this defender away. And that's going to be significant. Knight c6. And now h3 here. And we see the counterplay. And I looked at a couple of games earlier, and you could check, where we saw some strong GMs playing either international masters rated 22, 2300. And what I noticed in those games were that many times and I don't know if it was a psychological thing or intimidation, but I noticed that the lesser rated players tried to play like in a quote unquote solid fashion, play real solid opening systems, but ended up with no counterplay whatsoever. And even though they were able to last a little while, they never really were able to make the grandmaster worry about anything. They had nothing going on. Here in this game between these two grandmasters, we can see that the play is double-edged. We can see that black is already has counterplay in the queen side that white has to take seriously. White can't just ignore this queen side play and just continue on the king side. And that's how your play should be. If you're playing black, you want to play in a way where you have counterplay too. Don't just play solid and just get ran off the board. I have a game that I actually played at the Marshall Chess Club a little while ago, where I was playing the white pieces and my opponent played very solid, but didn't create any counterplay. So I had nothing to worry about, and I just went along with my plan and just crushed him. I'll go over that game when I get a chance. It just to show you like what happens if you try to play solid but without any real counter chances. You can't just let your opponent just do what he wants to do. So we see this game, we see Vallejo Pons playing, and getting his play, and he's telling white, hey, I'm playing over here. And now white has to try to get his attack going on the king side. Now with this pawn on d6, it makes it difficult because this is one of the key moves in this king side attack, because you would like to drive this defender away. So it's up to white to figure out what he's going to do. Let's keep looking. So a4, right? This idea is not necessarily to play on the queen side for white, but to try to slow up white's attack. Excuse me, slow up black's attack. Slow down black's attack. Um, One of the things in chess is when you have a clash of plans, there's a couple of ways to look at it. So let's say you have your plan and black has his plan. There's one way to look at it where you can say, okay, my plan, right, or my attack is more serious than his attack. Therefore, I can just ignore his attack and just go along with my plan. Okay, and all of this has to be based on calculation, of course. But that's a basic way of looking at it. Hey, my attack is more serious. He has to respect my attack and stop, working on his plans and come and try to stop my plans, right? Then there's the scenario where the opponent's attack is more serious than yours. So therefore, you have to take time to kind of stop his attack or slow it down, and then continue with your attack. And then there's a scenario, we'll call it C, where both players ignore each other's attacks on opposite wings because they both believe, or not even opposite wings, it could be on the same wing, but they just both believe their attacks are, they've evaluated the position differently and believe that their attacks are both, stronger than each other's. And this is where you get those real interesting games because somebody's wrong, you know. Um, in this position, white has come to the conclusion that black's attack must be slowed down first before he can continue his own. And so therefore he tries to, implement measures here. So for instance, if black plays b4, right, then you have like kind of this locked situation where say at the b4 white and just play a move like b3, and then it's kind of like, okay, where's black's play coming now? All right, and then white would just then continue on with, with his attack over there. Okay, but white, so understanding white doesn't really want to play over on the queen side, but he's come to the realization like, hey, this queen side attack is underway, it's pretty serious. I need to do something to slow it down. So now there's b4, right? And so with b4, white feels satisfied, like, hey, I've, got this guy to slow down a little bit, and now he goes on with his attack on the queen side. You see how that works? Because it's closed up over here on the queen side. So now it's like, man, how is black going to break through? And then you might ask yourself, well, why would black do that? Okay, well, black still has opportunities to break through. d5, moves like c4, etc. So watch how this, watch and learn, youngin. Watch how this gets done. So for now, white is satisfied. Like, hey, I've got him to play b4, and it slows attack down. So he goes on g4, rook c8. So now with the rook here, we see this intent to open up, on the c file now, right? And you might be saying, well, how is the c file getting opened up? Well, let's look. Knight g3. Again, kingside attack is white's plan. Very difficult. To me, it's kind of doomed because again, you need these pieces to be driven away. You need to provoke weakness. You need to provoke weakness on the king side. Right? There's too much protection, and the king side pawns are perfect. So the only thing white can really do is try to provoke weakness. Try to get an h6 out of black. Try to get a g6. Try to get this knight driven away. Something. Maybe the dark square bishop traded off. So this is a tense game right here. Knight goes away, anticipating move g5 so that it will not be with tempo. But notice weakness on the dark squares. Right? Black owns the dark squares. Okay, so white has to look out for these type of maneuvers. Right? Trading off pieces. So bishop e3. Powerful move. Again, just concentrating on these dark squares. Rook to b1. Again, this forces white to take his attention off of just all-out attack on the queen side, on the king side, and he has to do a prophylactic move before he can continue with his attacking schemes. Notice how black is not giving white the opportunity. White wants to play these type of moves and overrun white on black on the king side, but he just doesn't have the time. This is a critical move here. Knight d2. Why knight d2? Well, black is trying to provoke this trade here, and what happens is when knight takes d4 is played, then c takes d4, and then we have the open c file. This is what white does not want. Like bishop d2, for example, and then black gets a lot of play here in this situation. Knight d2. Now he's avoided the trade, but this cost a tempo, and white is hoping to play moves like f4, for instance. Again, sticking with the plan, and then even perhaps moves like knight c4 at some point. Okay, so he stops that idea. Bishop a6. Not only it stops that, but the idea of pushing c4, opening the c file. And again, once you know like the general plan, then the moves come, pretty easy. Like it's not hard to understand. Right? You just have to understand, get a plan. You have to have a plan. And this explains white's next move, b3. I just showed you what the idea was, c4 and capturing. So now white plays to restrict. Remember, the reason why white plays in this manner is because he understands that black's plan is very serious. So therefore he has to take time to try to hinder black's plan before he goes along with this attack on the king side. White understands that, hey, it's going to be difficult for me to push this attack through. So therefore, he's like trying to stop black first, because black's plan is a little bit easier to, more fluid. So he's doing everything he can to try to hold black up. So now what is black going to do to get his plan, going? Now black plays this move e5. Okay. Now remember, I told you one of the moves that white would have liked in a position is to be able to get this wedge formation in with e5, driving the piece off f6. But black played, and black played very well here. And now he plays this move e5. So not only does he stop e5 from happening, but now if say like f4, and bishop, I just make the move, then bishop to h4, very frustrating. so e4 is played. And if d5, then just simply e takes d5, and that just drops material. So you don't want to do that. So e5, and now this gives up a square to white here. Right? Have to be careful. But again, in chess, you can't have everything. So it's like it's giving and taking and weighing. Like, okay, I give up this, but I gain that. All right, and it's a matter of weighing, the compensation. If you have more compensation, right? If you're getting an advantage, trading advantage for the weakness, it's like it's usually not clear, cut and dry. Like, okay, I have everything, my opponent has nothing. It's usually, okay, I have something and my opponent has something. So you have to weigh, like, what's more valuable, my advantage or the disadvantage? What's more valuable, the advantage that I'm gaining or the advantage my opponent's gaining? If your advantage is more valuable, right? If you assess that your advantage is better, then you make the move. So, of course, Ponce knew that he was giving up this square, all right? But he looked at his advantage, right? And holding back black, his black-white is more important. Let's continue. So there it is. White takes this square, and with tempo. Ponce plays rook c6, knight f3, and now g6, okay? Because of course we don't want, not we, but black, let me take the arrow away. Of course, black doesn't want white to solidify himself there on f4. This was a calculated risk. He decided in his evaluation that yes, he'll allow white to sit on f4 temporarily, but then he'll boot him out. However, every pawn move creates a weakness, so now you have this little weakness around the dark squares. So we can see the double-edged nature of the position, right? Black has his plan on the queen side. White is trying to get through on the king side. So right now it looks like black's plan is at a temporary standstill here, because with the pawn structure, it's like, how is he going to do anything? The only possible break now is d5, right? But that's all black needs is this one break or a piece sacrifice, right? But at the same time, it's not really clear how white is going to break through on the king side. So the game is very tense and interesting. So knight g3 is played. Now, knight h6 seems natural, but then after king h8, it's hard to see, the future. So for instance, after g5, bishop g7, knight g4, let's say f6, it's hard to see what white has gained there. Okay, this position might backfire after, say, g takes f6. So perhaps h6, and then the position goes on. Very, very tense position. So it's hard to blame Arvind's move here. He just drops back knight g3. Now rook comes to e8, fortifying this pawn here. Very important for black's plan. Queen d2. Again, the move looks good on paper, but it's really, if you ask yourself, well, what exactly is it doing? Not too much. Okay, bishop g7. Knight h2. Another break possible is f4. So this definitely has to come to consideration here. Moves like f4, rook f1 and f4, etc. Bringing the knight back. Also, moves like g5, followed by knight g4. These are all thematic moves. Again, trying to provoke weaknesses in the black position. Knight f8. There it is, f4. E takes f4. Bishop takes f4. Bishop to e5. The rook goes to f1. And we see slowly, methodically, white trying to make this happen. It's kingside attack. Knight f e6. F takes E5. D takes E5. And now take a moment, right? So again, at the E4 and G4 is played, what do you have? You have this big hole here on F4. Right? How do you defend against that? The only way is you have to bring a piece back. But if you bring a piece back, then, or the knight back rather, the knight can just take, and you still have problems on the F4 square. Knight F3 is played. F6. So we see black fortifying defenses once again. These exchanges. Knight E2. G5. Again, looking at this square here. Now again, here's another situation where you had these trade-offs. So after G5 is played, you have weaknesses created there. Okay, so it's a give and take. Again, black is saying, okay, I'm going to give you some compensation, but I feel that my compensation is more. All right. So again, that's I can't emphasize that enough. A lot of players, and again, these are things I've, again, I've had a coach, chess coach, I still do. And these are things we talk about. And these are things that, like, almost imperceptible to you. Like, if you kind of play chess and don't, like, have somebody that's stronger than you to kind of help you, because a lot of time we try to get everything in chess. We want a complete advantage where the opponent has 100%, or no, no counterplay at all, no nothing. But a lot of games, it's not like that. It goes back, it's back and forth. Opponent has, maybe 40% compensation, maybe you have 60%, or it's 30-70 or whatever. There's always something. So you can't be afraid to give, sometimes you gotta give opponent squares, but this is where you have to have concrete analysis in your games. You have to be strong tactically. You have to take the time. You can't be lazy. You have to look and say, okay, I'm gonna give these squares to my opponent, but this is what I'm getting in return. And what's, and be able to evaluate the position at the end. Rook to F2. Pawn say Rook C7. We see the doubling up here. Natural moves. Doubling up on the backward pawn. Again, the thing about this is that black always has knight F4, so it's again, it's like smoke and mirrors. Like, yes, he can double up on the F file, but how are you gonna really deal with this once this knight comes here? Rook F8, H4. Again, attacking, continuing attack. H6, and now white says, hey, I'm gonna go for it. Why not? And now again, there's the trade-off. So would you rather have white's advantage or black's advantage? So now finally here, knight takes D4 is played. And this has been a war of attrition. This is why, one of the reasons why I decided to go over this game. Very fascinating game. So now, knight takes D4 is played, and you know which pawn is gonna capture. Of course, it's gonna be the C pawn. Right? Black has been waiting for this the whole game. Look at that, backward pawn central. Okay. Remember, black's original plan, which was the attack on the queen side, but we seen this war of attrition where white fought against a black plan, right? Tried to keep the queen side closed. Black in turn fought against the white plan and hindering the advance on the king side. So both players had respect and understood each other's ideas and made moves to hinder and slow down, right? What have you, these ideas, and now we see things coming to a head. Now, this critical move has been played. Knight takes d4. Now the c file is opened up with the backward pawn that that white is compelled to defend now. Knight f5, threatening knight takes here. Check. Ponce plays rook to h7. Now, king h7 is a natural looking move. However, I can see why he didn't want to put his king on the h file, because there's this chance to exchange here and eventually perhaps get pieces over to this file, the heavy pieces over to this file here. So rook h7 is played, and what I was going to say before I showed the next move was that now white has to consider black actually utilizing this file with moves like h5 himself and playing h takes g4, opening up the h file. h5. Now, with all the discussion that we've had during this game, which side does that move benefit? h5. I just told you for about 20 minutes or so how white is trying to attack on the king side. Okay, that move clearly benefits black, right? Closing down the king side, right? It's a provocative move to close down the king side. Now, what's interesting about it is that there's no way to protect this pawn immediately. The king cannot go here because, you know, the knight is covering that square. So the knight is doing a great job hindering the defense of this pawn. So it's kind of awkward right now, because if black could wave a magic wand, he would love to move his rook back here and then just put his king there. The king is nice and safe. So it's kind of awkward. But let's see how black handles this situation. But like I said, this is good for black, okay? Because for all intents and purposes, we can assess this position here at move 35. Sorry for the dog barking in the background. We can assess this position here as better for black. The reason why is because after looking at both players' plans and how their plans worked out, we can say that black's plan is has been more successful just by a hair. The reason why is because black still has prospects of attacking right on this c file, right? It's very, very annoying for black to have to defend that. Excuse me, white to have to defend that. Whereas to me, it's a little bit more difficult, for almost impossible for white without giving up the exchange to penetrate on the king side now. So this relegates white to some passivity here. Let's keep going. Bishop c8. So now threatening just to basically eliminate the problem. This is white's best piece right here. Right? Bishop is not really that strong in this type of closed position. And so eliminate this bishop. Trade this bishop for the knight. You have this traditional advantage right here where you have strong knight versus bad bishop, and this bishop is bad as it's locked in behind all of these pawns. So this is the imbalance black is looking to create. Good knight versus strong weak bishop. King h2, interesting move because this creates tactical possibilities later on for black. Maybe king h1 was better. You see immediately See the transfer of the queen here, but in a subtle sense, we see this opposition of queen and king. I always talk about opposition in my videos because you might look and think, oh, it means nothing. There's two, it's pawn and knight. In between, the king is perfectly safe. But what happens is a sack here, a sack there. Next thing you know, the king is in a dangerous position. So queen c7. Now bishop comes to f3. Bishop takes f5. Right? G takes f5. And now you have this scenario again. Strong knight versus bad bishop. And knight d5. And you see this opposition allows this tactic. Okay? Not saying it was the best move, but just the fact it allows this tactic. The best move is probably perhaps this rook c8. Just putting more pressure here on the position. Okay? And tripling up on this file. Maybe queen d6, rook c7, and creating like Alekhein's gun scenario here. Alright, let's keep it moving. Anyway, Ponce went for this move, knight d5. So e takes d5 because, to allow the knight to go there would be, you might as well resign with that knight on d6 with so much influence in the position. It's definitely worth the rook there, if not more. So e takes d5, and now there it is. Exploiting the opposition. So check. And he doesn't take the bishop, but he instead wins the exchange. And we see all this dynamic play from Ponce. Of course, he could have just simply took right here. And queen check, and then the king would have just went in the corner. For instance, queen e6, king h8. Say d6, and then queen c2 is possible. Or you could play it safe, play a move like queen to c8. So g4. So now you have bishop to e4. It's hard to move, but if rook e2, then just simply g takes f3. Rook takes f3, rook g7 check. Rook g3, again, thematic type move when you have your pawn set up like that. And black just has a much better endgame here. This is going to be a killer. You have this backward pawn. Another passer right here. These pawns are very weak. Easy winning endgame for black. So takes the exchange. Queen takes f2. A strong move there. Of course, this pawn can't be captured because of the rook coming there. Ponce said, go ahead, take the pawn. Not really worried about it. If queen takes h6, then queen c2 check. Right? So on the liability of that. And that all goes back to that knight takes d4 capture, opening up the c file earlier. Rook e1. Rook e8. d6. Queen takes d6, and that move was done. That sacrifice was done just to get the queen off of this square. So queen d6, and now he takes over there. And this is a funny move because it locks the queen in behind enemy lines. So the queen can't retreat now. King G1. Rook to E5. And now Rook E2. Of course, this pawn has to be guarded. So for instance, if King G2, and just move like Rook C5. Then again, just going into a winning ending. Rook E2, forcing the endgame. This endgame is just clearly one for black. And after King H7, GM Arvinda resigned here. Excuse me. So let's just sum up this game. It's been a long video, but it was very rich, um, and possibilities here, and we got to see the plans for both sides. So just summing up the main points of this game, we saw um, players with an attack on opposite wings. We saw a King's Indian attack from white without the E5, and which was a major difference because that pawn being on E5 creates a wedge in the position and gives black less counterplay than he had in this game. It drives pieces from the F6 square and makes it more difficult for white to defend his king side because he can't transfer his pieces, from the queen side over to the king side to defend is easy. So that made a major difference. So going into that position as white without the possibility of playing the E5 is, can be problematic. Nevertheless, white played very energetically and tried to create, the king side attack, and we saw black on the other side pursuing his queen side play. We saw also how each opponent responded to each other's ideas, and both players played prophylactically at times to hinder the ideas of the other opponent while still going on with their own ideas. So that's very important and a tool that you can use in your own chess games. Don't always just go for your own ideas without considering stopping your opponent's ideas. Sometimes you have to stop, assess the position, and weigh, the evidence as to how serious is your opponent's attacking possibilities, whether he's attacking your king or he's just attacking on the queen side. So we seen that. We saw black take time out to pause white's king side ambitions, and we saw white take time out and pause black's queen side ambitions. We also saw finally white basically making this trade on d4, creating this weakness on the queen side, and black being able to exploit that weakness, although he never actually won the pawn on c2, but he used the fact that white had to protect the pawn, as like a blackmail, so to speak. All right. We saw from the beginning black's intention to attack on the queen side with this move, b5, and how he followed up logically. This is a very important move, right? Not playing b5 with d5, leaving the c5 square weak, but keeping an eye on the e4 e5 push. Okay, so that was an important point. We already discussed the prophylactic measures taken by both sides. Another point I wanted to reiterate in closing was how I said that chess between two strong players is hardly ever one-sided, where one player has all the play, the other player has no counterplay. That's usually when you see strong player versus weak player. The weak player tries to play like a solid holding type game and winds up without counterplay and just gets crushed like slowly, and thinks that he or she was somehow in the game, whereas in reality they were never in the game. The grandmaster just did, fulfill the requirements of the position, won a pawn or whatever, and pushed it up the board. But games between two strong masters, you see the play is double-edged, and don't be afraid to keep to give up an advantage, to give your opponent play, for your play. And the key is evaluating the position and evaluating the compensation that the opponent has. So, and we saw this illustrated several times in the game. Whereas, for instance, after this move, G5 right here, Black showed he was willing to give up these squares, right? But he had his own compensation, right? And you have to weigh, like, is my advantage, does my advantage or my compensation outweigh the opponent's compensation? So don't get greedy. Notice how he gave white the opportunity to attack down the F file. But again, he understood that he always could drop a knight in there. So again, don't ever think that the play is going to be one-sided. Okay? As we can see right here, white had chances too. It's just that in the end, black had the greater chances. And it's understanding the evaluation of these positions that will allow you to make certain decisions. Because if you try to have every advantage in the position, it's just not going to work out for you. It just doesn't, it's not going to work out like that unless you're playing a weak player who doesn't know what he's doing. Usually you can come up with a plan and you might have a certain, an advantage that you can stick to, but your opponent's going to have something also. So you just have to be able to weigh that. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this game. Please take time to subscribe and like the video. All comments are welcome. And I'll see you, see you on the next one.